This Monday.com ad was created by a team of people and AI agents. Reese, our content agent, wrote the copy based on our best practices, like mentioning Monday.com 3 times. That was the second. Johnny, our coordination agent, built the timeline and kept everyone aligned. Olivia, our human creative director, stayed in the loop. Because agents are great, but they don't always know when a joke lands. She had one note: tell listeners it only takes minutes to build an agent. So, minutes. Create your own AI agent today on Monday.com.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Jardiance has a big story to tell. Discover Jardiance empagliflozin 10 or 25 milligram tablets. Visit Jardiance.com, call 1-888-968-6648, or talk to your doctor to see if Jardiance is right for you.
A little pill with a big story to tell.
T-Mobile is reinventing business internet with super broadband. Whether you run a small office or a factory of 500, connection is everything. Powered by America's fastest 5G internet, plus Starlink. Super broadband from T-Mobile reaches every zip code in the U.S. Super broadband, a new era of business internet. Visit superbroadband.com to learn more.
Fastest 5G network based on analysis by Ookla Speed Test Intelligence Data 2H 2025. Speeds vary due to local network characteristics and management. Satellite requires hardware installation. Clear view of the sky with 36-month commitment.
There's a lot of noise in the business world today. Leaders like you need clear insights from professionals you can trust. Navigating Beyond the Expected is a new podcast from Truist Securities, featuring conversations with investment banking experts at the center of financing deals in manufacturing, healthcare, entertainment, and more. It's practical advice for leaders who need to know what's coming next. Subscribe at truist.com/beyond podcast. Copyright Truist Securities Incorporated, member FINRA and SIPC.
This is Tab Ramos from Inside American Soccer. The Cup Knockout Round is now, and DraftKings has you covered for every single match. The DraftKings app is now available in all 50 states and includes all markets, bringing the game straight to your fingertips wherever you are. New DraftKings customers, sign up with code DK1, spend $5 to get $200 in rewards within 21 days. That's code DK1 in partnership with DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Bet with DK Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 1-800-MY-RESET. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino in Kansas, bet tax pass-through may apply in Illinois. 21 and over. Void in Canada. Event contract trading with DraftKings predictions involves risk of loss. Availability varies. Bet to get bonus bets that expire in 7 days. Trade to get $50 in predictions dollars that expire in 1 year. Issued every 7 days via click-to-claim for 21 days. One non-withdrawable reward redeemable. Predictions offer void in New York. Ends July 19th. Terms at dkng.co/audio.
Oh, hear that? That's the Spam brand, singing you a love song. Spam, sizzle, pork, and mmm.
You've reached American History Hotline. You ask the questions, we get the answers. Leave a message.
Hey there, American History Hotliners. Your host, Bob Crawford here. Happy to be joining you again for another episode of American History Hotline. You're the ones with the questions. I'm a guy trying to get you some answers. And keep those questions coming. The best way to get us a question is to record a video or a voice memo on your phone and email it to americanhistoryhotline@gmail.com. That's American History Hotline, all one word, @gmail.com. And remember, we're American History Hotline. I love ancient Egypt as much as the next guy, but there's plenty to talk about on this continent. Okay, today's question is about the man, the myth, the legend, George Washington, father of our country. Here to help me answer this question today is Alexis Coe, a New York Times bestselling presidential historian and author of the book You Never Forget Your First, a biography of George Washington. Thank you for joining me today.
I'm happy to be here.
Okay, here's the question we're hoping you can help us answer.
Hi, this is Begum from Turkey. I have a question for you. Did George Washington really cut down a cherry tree and then tell the truth, or is that a myth?
I love this story and I love this question. It is by far the greatest fan fiction ever invented. Because it was a lie. And I'm sorry to tell you, so were the wooden teeth. But as an aside, the best thing that a reader has ever given me, because readers often, they send things, they show up to readings or events with presents, which is great. The best thing I've ever received was a reader gave me a printout of a Venn diagram with Sir Mix-a-Lot and George Washington, and the Venn diagram of he could never tell a lie, and I like big butts. It was so good. So here's the thing. He could very much tell a lie. And we know this without even fact-checking the story. First of all, if you've ever spoken to a child, the concept of truth is very loose because their concept of the world is very loose and what's possible. So it's surely possible that he lied. But George Washington, to say that he could never tell a lie is denying him one of the great passions of his life, which was spying. He was a spy master during the war, and he loved it. I mean, he doesn't come alive. A woman from the Massachusetts Historical Society once said to me, I don't know how you can spend so much time with him. He's so vanilla. But he loved spying. And so I really think that we have to do him the honor of letting him have that. The reason this story exists is because of a man with a great name, Parson Weems.
I was going to ask you about Parson Weems. Like, tell us about this man. And because this isn't the only story about George Washington that became legend that is maybe not true.
From this man.
That came from Parson Weems.
Yes.
Because I was watching the inauguration of the current president, and Cardinal Timothy Dolan, who I have great respect for as a man of God, he had a speech, and he talked about George Washington at Valley Forge in the snow. We've all seen the painting praying to God. And isn't that also a Parson Weems invention?
No. Well, okay.
That is not.
Here's the thing. We can blame Parson Weems for so many things. And I want to talk about how these lies happen, because it was sort of like a rollout. It happened over time. My first job out of grad school was being as a research curator at the New York Public Library in Bryant Park, which people might remember from Ghostbusters. It has the two lions in the front, and we have every volume of Parson Weems in there. And it's like watching Pinocchio's nose grow. It's fantastic as far as the art of biography. Parson Weems, amazing name, right? And I just want to point out, I wrote something about I think for MSNBC now. I can't even recall. It's been a whirlwind of a few months, but we know that Washington didn't kneel to pray at Valley Forge the way we know that he told a lie, because that painting we've all seen, it was painted decades after Washington died. And I have to tell you, there were no Polaroids at the time, so we don't have any photographs. We also know that Washington was a deist. And deists do not believe, it's a set it and forget it kind of narrative here as far as the philosophy. So Washington did not believe that there was any God to speak to. He certainly wasn't going to kneel in the cold snow. He was, it's an impossibility. And that's a projection of what the man who spoke at Trump's inauguration wants the country to believe about itself, that we are a Christian nation. And of course, you can be a Christian and you can be a patriot and not believe that we're a Christian nation, because the first treaty that America ever made under John Adams, the first line of it is, we are not a Christian nation. So it's pretty convincing to me. But this story is the same in this way. So Parson Weems, an itinerant minister, a bookseller, a kind of like rogue fabulist who's going around the country trying to make a Washington.
So what year is this?
This is Parson Weems arrives on the scene a year before Washington dies, and Washington has left office, and he does so with the explicit intent of writing a book about Washington. He doesn't have any connection to Washington. He doesn't have access to his papers, which Washington is busy editing. And when I say editing, I mean getting rid of stuff. But of course, he has no idea what we will like and dislike. So he gets rid of probably the wrong things and definitely keeps the wrong things. And Parson Weems is there. He's already started. And then Washington dies. And he's like, fantastic, because the nation doesn't know what to do without Washington. He is the great unifier. They didn't know who. The reason the presidency and the powers of the presidency are so vague is because they assumed Washington would be the president, and he had given up power, which was considered, sort of unfathomable. It had happened, of course, but it was really easy to understand and conceive of that it would not happen. And so it was this great thing. So Parson Weems is like, fantastic. He writes to his publisher and he says, this book is going to sell like flax seeds. Because flax seeds are flying off I know, I use it all the time. It doesn't really hit, but I love it. And once in a while you have a reaction like you just had. So, the people who get it, they'll love you for it.
Right.
So Parson Weems, first on the scene. And I don't know if history is written by the victors. I'm not sure I believe that, but I do believe it is written by the first responders. And Parson Weems realizes, okay, this country is desperate to know who they are. Now, in his defense, there's no study of history that's formalized in this way. There are historians, there are people who write history, and of course, but there's no sort of standard. There are no conferences everyone goes to. It is like the wild west of scholarship. And the study of history, even biography, that is like relatively recent. And so he is going to do whatever he wants here. And boy, does he. The Cherry Tree story is not in the first volume. There are lots of good stories, but the thing is, the stories that were talked about, because not everyone is literate, you also have to remember. So these books are being read in pubs the same way all the partisan newspapers are. And the stories that everyone keeps repeating are the great myth stories, because any way that you can paint it, that Washington was born pure, the same way the Valley Forge story tells us that he was a Christian who believed that he could pray to God. Well, that means that we're all good. That means we're all Christian. That means we can all have this relationship that a lot of people increasingly want, right? And it's funny because at the time, there were not as many churches as you would assume. There had been a great drop after the British left. So we just do not know who we are. And so why not have this founding father who is superhuman in every single way, including his goodness?
We are in between the Great Awakenings.
Yes.
Right? We're in between the Great Awakenings. All right. Today, my guest is Alexis Coe, a New York Times bestselling presidential historian and author of the book, You Never Forget Your First, a biography of George Washington. We're talking about the real George Washington. Was he cutting down cherry trees or chomping on corn cakes with wooden teeth? Or are those just stories? Speaking of stories, speaking of research, speaking of historians like yourself, before we get back to Washington, I got to ask you, you are one of the few women to ever write about George Washington. Is that true?
I am, in the last 100 years, and I didn't know this until years into writing the project, and indeed, I am somehow the first woman historian to write a biography without a husband as a co-author, or focusing on, let's say, Martha Washington, in over 100 years. And it shows. It shows.
Well, yes, because one of the things I remember about your book that I'll probably never forget is you are taught in the book. I think early in the book, you're talking about the historiography of Washington, right? And how all these men have written about Washington, and they all these men seem to be, and I think this fits in with the myth conversation, with the size of his thighs. All the men who've written about Washington were fascinated and couldn't get over the size of Washington's thighs. Can you just talk about that before we get on the teeth?
Yes. Here's the thing. I understand it. I have told you before that I have a pretty serious crush on John Andre. It's the most traitorous thing about me. He was the man who recruited Benedict Arnold, and he was executed for that sin by Washington. Everyone was begging him not to because John Andre could really, he had appeal even in his own days. Hamilton was just crushed by this. But Washington his thighs were nice. I'm not saying they weren't nice. I've looked at them all now to compare. But the thing is that I noticed when I read these biographies is that they all start out the same way, as if like everyone took an oath that we're going to proceed in the same manner. And they say, okay, we're going to say he's too marble to be real. He's in danger of just becoming a sort of nothing burger of a founder because, and this is true, Jefferson has those beautiful words, Lincoln as well. Everyone seems to have something to ground them except for Washington. You know, you don't really get a sense of his personality except that he might have been so perfect and maybe too perfect to be that interesting. But then they all talk about, they don't really get us any closer to him. And in part because they spend a lot of time telling us how like manly he was. And what is so perplexing to me is I can't point you toward a single thing I've ever read that suggests he's not manly. So when someone goes really far to say something, you wonder, okay, what are they covering up here? Not only do they talk about how he's manly, but they talk about how he's virile. And there's no evidence for that, except that he wanted, when he was about 18 or 19, he basically wrote to the father of every rich 14, 15, 16-year-old girl in any colony, but particularly Virginia, and claimed to be in love because he wanted to move up in the world. He, when he was about 19, probably became sterile from a trip abroad. He got sick. He often got sick. So he probably couldn't have children.
What is that? Like the rumor, one of the rumors is that he became infertile after contracting smallpox as a teenager.
Yes. He definitely got smallpox during his only trip abroad with his half-brother.
Where did he go on that trip?
He went to Barbados, and he was quite taken with it. But he got sick. He often got sick. Carbuncle. He was bled a ton. You name it, he got sick. And there are no legitimate heirs that we have ever encountered. Of course, people make claims once in a while, but usually those claims do add up to something or they don't. And these have never added up to anything. Martha had children when they met. 2 young children, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old from her previous husband. And what was interesting to me is that they would talk about how, well, she probably couldn't have any more because, you know, if you have a hard childbirth, you can't have more children. That is true. But there is nothing to suggest she had a difficult childbirth. If anything, it seemed like they were quite easy and she recovered quickly. And she could have more. And in early America, they were not as obsessed with these biological connections. And so it was just not a big deal. But so they go out of their way to kind of blame her. And then they talk about his body in a way that just made me uncomfortable. Like, am I reading him a romance novel? I get it. He's manly. I'm not arguing with this. It's fine. I don't care if he could have kids or not. He seemed like he was like a helicopter parent. So I never questioned his feelings of paternity towards these children. And not just these children, but all the other children he raised.
So let's move from the thighs up to the mouth.
Yeah. Keep your eyes where it matters. Oh, but they talk about his rippling jaw too. So okay, but we'll keep it professional.
Let's go teeth, and then we can talk jawline if we need to.
Yes. So the teeth. This is interesting because when I first encountered this, now I live in the Hudson Valley, but this was pre-pandemic, before I owned 2 saws. And I thought, okay, I don't know a lot about wood, but I do know you're not supposed to get it wet.
Right.
Because if you get it wet, it expands. Eventually, it will start to deteriorate. You know, if you've ever been to anyone's house and put a glass down
that would hurt.
Yeah, but also those founding fathers were gossipy AF. And so they would have talked about it. And they loved to cut each other down and not lie about it. But sometimes they did. And they would have talked about this. We would have known. And also it just is not, so it's not a suitable material for dentures. In Washington, there's no evidence to suggest he was some sort of like innovator in early dentistry. But this is a story, again, that we tell ourselves because we don't want to know the real story. So just like we know that Washington could tell a lie, just like we know that Washington was a deist, so he didn't pray at Valley Forge, we also know that Washington's teeth were not made of wood. And that's the real story here, and the story that people still don't want to tell. So St. Francis Tavern in New York, in Lower Manhattan, where Washington had his final meal after leaving New York after the war, they still have they have one of his sets of dentures, and in the ID, they say it was made out of ivory, true, hippopotamus, true, his teeth, maybe. Obviously, they were taken out for, they fell out for a reason. By the time he was inaugurated, he had like one left. But there's the other thing that was in it, and that is what we don't want to talk about because it is not the story we want to tell ourselves.
What was it?
The teeth of enslaved people. And this was not a practice he invented. But what was interesting is Washington was very cheap. He was land rich, cash poor. At first, he went to a dentist to buy teeth because that's what rich people did. And they put them in these like very terrible early contraptions they called dentures, but, were just awful. And you can see that in Washington's portrait. He looks pained. His smile changes in each one. That's because he was really uncomfortable, and they changed the entire structure of his jaw. The teeth at first he purchased, and there are ads that this, various dentists would put in the paper. And then Washington realized who was selling their teeth, who sells things like teeth and organs, and the people who are desperate or exploited. And Washington enslaved hundreds of people. And so why pay top dollar? Why pay retail when you can go wholesale? And so we know from his ledgers and from his diaries that he paid people who he enslaved for their teeth, and he paid them under market value. We don't know how those teeth came out of the mouth. We don't know if it was by choice. We don't know if they fell out. We don't know if these people, who were often described by visitors to Mount Vernon as being in, torn clothing and in bad shape, and we know that they were very hungry. We don't know. But we do know that they ended up in Washington's ledger. He paid some money for them, and then they went into his dentures. And that is a story that there is still obviously a lot of resistance to telling.
What's up, fam? I'm sports journalist Ari Chambers.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your girl, Sam J.
And we're the hosts of Everyone Watches Women's Sports, a new podcast from Together and iHeart Women's Sports.
Because let's be real, women's sports is giving us way too much to talk about these days.
The highlights, the rivalries, the breakout stars, the moments that take over your entire timeline.
And the conversations that start during the game and somehow keep going all week.
Every week, we're breaking down the biggest stories across women's sports.
We'll give you our takes, our debates, and probably a few disagreements.
We'll talk to athletes, celebrate big moments, and get into what's happening on and off the field, court, track, and beyond.
Because we're not just interested in what happened, we're interested in why everyone's talking about it. Because everyone watches women's sports. So if you're already a fan,
or you're just getting into the game, there's a seat for you right here.
Listen to Everyone Watches Women's Sports
on the iHeartRadio app,
Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, I'm Hoda Kotb, host of the podcast Joy 101 with Hoda Kotb. Okay, if you know me, you know this. I'm always searching for inspiration, for support, and useful tools to help maximize joy. So this podcast lets us uncover all of that together. We're going to have these meaningful conversations with the world's most fascinating people, like when actress Olivia Munn shared how she overcame fierce health challenges that she never saw coming.
I've gone through breast cancer and then helped my mother through breast cancer, and that was more difficult. There's a lot of people who understand postpartum depression. I was not prepared for postpartum anxiety.
Olympic champ Shawn Johnson revealed why she had no choice but to be a gymnast.
There was something about gymnastics that was intoxicating to me. It's given me a belief that we all have one of those treasures inside of us. We just have to find it.
Listen to Joy 101 with Hoda Kotb on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
My first guest is Paris Hilton, Shakira, Luke and Yerin, Samira y Gracie. I'm so excited.
On the bouncy bed.
You have surprises?
Many surprises.
Welcome to Suite 305, where the group chat comes to life. What up? Es como que una forma de decir como, hola amiga, hola mejor amiga, hola hermana. What up?
Mira, nunca lo había hablado con nadie. Excepto con mis hijos. Mis hijos sí saben.
Sé mi amante.
Uf. Punch. Qué increíble. Ya la telenovela.
You're the only person I know that loves a yellow starburst. It's lemonade.
No hay alguien que te falta, como que tú dices, me gustaría colaborar con esta persona. This is Suite 305. Listen to Suite 305 with Lele Pons as part of My Cultura podcast network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Jake Brennan, and on the Disgraceland podcast, I explore the wild lives of rock stars and unbelievable true crime stories from music history. These are the stories you haven't heard, the kind you'll end up telling someone else. Like the time Paul McCartney spent in one of the world's most notorious prisons. Imagine that. You're Paul McCartney. It's 1980. You're an ex-Beatle. And you're doing time in one of Japan's worst prisons, right there alongside Yakuza gangsters, and for a ridiculous charge. Or the bizarre crime Lady Gaga is accused of. Who is the artist Lady Gaga is being accused of doing the unthinkable to, after allegedly stealing her music and style to become famous? And what about that time Blondie's Debbie Harry escaped a serial killer? The man who had given her that ride she barely escaped from was Ted Bundy. Listen to Disgraceland on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everyone, it's the Jonas Brothers. This week on the podcast, Hey Jonas, we're hanging out with the one, the only, and the one, Michael Bublé.
You guys, I'm genuinely a huge fan. Like, it's funny, you know, I made a whole thing about doing this TikTok where I got you guys to sign the guitar, but right. It was real. Like, we listen to you in the car all the time. Like, it literally is hanging up with all your signatures.
Wow. I am so honored. After Kevin's recent, let's call it interesting confession about Michael, I had a feeling this wasn't going to be going away. We figured there's only one thing to do. We must invite Michael Bublé on the podcast, and we want to know what's on his Sexy Time playlist.
You know, I did an interview, and they're like, have you heard about this Jonas Brothers thing? And they're like, what did you think of it? And I was like, well, I mean, it's reciprocal. Like, what a man got to do? No. What a man got to do?
We talk about Kevin's confession, Michael's reaction, and a whole lot more. Do you have a hockey rink in your house?
I do.
Our conversation with Michael Bublé is out now. Listen to Hey Jonas on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is American History Hotline. I'm your host, Bob Crawford. Today, my guest is Alexis Coe, a New York Times bestselling presidential historian and the author of the book, You Never Forget Your First, a biography of George Washington. Today, we're talking about the myth and the facts of George Washington's life as best as we can. Remember, send us your burning history questions. Record yourself using the voice memo app on your phone and email it to americanhistoryhotline@gmail.com. That's American History Hotline, all one word, @gmail.com. Now back to the conversation. So while Washington was alive and shortly after his death, there was a huge effort to deify him. Do we know how he felt about it while he was still alive? Because he must have known, and I guess there's evidence in his farewell address that he knew the power he held and the fact that he gave up power willingly. He must have known that was going to elevate him in the minds of his fellow countrymen.
Washington, I always say, wanted to be at the center of his nation's story from the earliest age. Because his father died when he was young, he became the head of his household when he was 10. And he also had to drop out of school at 14. So he really had a bit of a complex. He felt like he was, poorer than his half-brothers. He was less educated. This was true throughout his life with the founders. They went to Harvard and William and Mary and all these colleges. So he definitely felt like, I'm out here trying to prove something. But there are a couple moments in his life that are really significant. Everyone always argues, oh, this president, that president had an evolution. I don't believe that's true with Washington, but I do believe he has something that is really undervalued. And I could talk about it all the time, and I still don't feel like I get the point across, which is he could be satisfied. And so Washington, when he left and he gave up power, sure, he knew it had an effect, but he just wanted to get home before Christmas. He was super annoyed by that point because he'd been asking Jefferson, how do you want me to do this? How do you want me to do this? Because we're coming up with all this stuff on the fly, right? We're trying to create traditions and meaningful moments because now we're a country, right? It's one thing to fight the war. Now you have to country. And so he leaves and he just wants to get home. And then Congress does him dirty. They give Americans the right, they basically waive postage to send him letters. So then he has to hire a bunch of people, and he hates, I really can't emphasize enough how much he hates to spend money. And so he's annoyed. He builds like back stairs to avoid people. The only time I would say that he really enjoyed being famous was we're an agrarian society. He is a nerd. He's a farming nerd. And he builds, barns with way too many sides. But he's after a mule. He really wants a mule. But you can't get a mule in America. You can't get it. The king has forbidden it. It's illegal. And he puts the word out kind of shamelessly. And then he gets one. He gets two. He gets he gets them. And one dies. But he has like a great time leasing out. So he's charging for this. He's putting ads in the paper like, the great general's mule. You want it? You got to pay for it. That's the only time he's very excited about this because he believes the mule is the future. And if you've ever hung out with a mule, the mule is the future. Like I would love a mule. Mules are super friendly. And so he does not like being famous, but he's aware of it. At the same time, Washington is one of those people. And this is also another example of him. So he could be satisfied. He did not want to be president. I don't believe he said, oh, I can't possibly be general, but he had like stuffed himself in his old uniform and he was now, a much older man. So as we all know, bodies change after 40 and he was like definitely changed.
Right. And every time there was a crisis in the country, he was called upon to make a comeback. And that's what Adams did during the quasi-war.
Yes, he's always called, and he's like, it's not just that he's tired. He is. It's not just that he's outlived every man in his family, which he has. He's arthritic. Again, he has, by this time, if we're talking about after he's served 2 terms and left voluntarily, there were no term limits because, again, we just can trust him and figure, okay, whatever he decides to do, everyone will follow. That was true until it wasn't. That was, and I said that with FDR and with Trump. So he is, he's not excited. He calls going to the inauguration, going to my funeral. And he said, I have everything to lose. And he did. And so he's exceptionally sensitive to criticism. And he is not happy about rising partisanship because partisanship is as old as the country. The North and the South were fighting as soon as the war was over. It was over debts. It was over where the capital should be, you name it. They were fighting from the very beginning. And that, of course, is partisanship, regionalism. So he's not thrilled about being world famous. I wouldn't say that he was loving it. He left, and Jefferson wrote that I've never met anyone who's more sensitive to criticism, and I would agree with that as far as leaders.
So how much of what we know about Washington is from the biographies written about him? How has his reputation been shaped over time to here we are 250 years later, almost 250 years later. How do we think of him even today?
I think I'm going to die on a lot of hills. I think I could spend the rest of my life explaining how these things never happened and trying to get you to wrap your head around the things that did happen, the fun history like the spying, and also the difficult history that makes us uncomfortable. Like the
own a judge
fact that own a judge, but also Hercules. Other, he they like to say, oh, he never sold someone he enslaved. Yes, he did, and he not only sold them, he sold them to the Caribbean. When the life expectancy on a sugar plantation was, just a few years past that point. And he said, this guy's trouble. So he marked him, right? This is a person who, like all of us, but more extreme, obviously, had good and bad. And as a biographer, I see everyone on their best days and their worst days. It's not my job to judge. I'm not judging anyone. What I am doing is presenting you with the facts and trying to let you know that complexity, it's not a liability. But because the reason I believe that people are so resistant to this, sure, some people are lazy about learning. We know this. But I think it's also because people are sensitive about their own role and implication in this. And so when I think about this story, I think about, Washington never wanted to be, the reason he didn't want to be president is he was worried that we would be dependent on him. And after he died, that we would not be able to survive. There was never supposed to be a king. There was never supposed to be a major military leader who was, in charge of everything. And there was never obviously supposed to be any sort of religious person who was in charge. We don't have a pope. So he was very concerned about that. I feel like the story of Washington, I always say best of luck if you're trying to cancel him.
Right.
Because I don't know how you do that. You cancel George Washington, you cancel America. There's no concern for me there. But I do think that we have a hard time holding three things at once when it comes to Washington and when it comes to America, because he is very much tied into our nation's identity. And I talk about it in terms of how I think about America's 250, which is a part of my study at New America. But also I have a new column at the Times, the book review, for the next year, where I'm just focusing on our 250th and the books we need to read in order to understand ourselves. And there are three things, right? We can hold them all at once. I promise you we can, which is pride in the founding, a reckoning for the ways we've fallen short, and aspiration towards a better future. But in order to do any of that when it comes to Washington or our nation, we have to be honest. And I really encourage people to realize that they are not necessarily implicated, but perhaps to also think about it the way I think about my own books. Why do you write these books? How'd you pick Washington? How'd you pick Kennedy? I didn't really feel like I had a choice. I was cast in these roles in some ways because I see something that I can't unsee it. You are not complicit in any narrative if you don't resist the truth. If you resist the truth, I truly believe this for myself and everyone else, that you are complicit. So the only way you are guilty of anything, slavery, whatever it is if you deny it. Everyone contains multitudes.
Bob Dylan.
Yes, leaves of grass, right? Whitman. But we also, and that's okay, because that doesn't, it's okay in the grand narrative because everyone does. And the sooner we can sit in that discomfort, the better our country will be.
I've been talking with Alexis Coe, a New York Times bestselling presidential historian and the author of the book, You Never Forget Your First, a biography of George Washington, and soon, Young Jack, a biography of John F. Kennedy, 1915 to 1957. Alexis, thanks for joining us on American History Hotline.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to American History Hotline, a production of iHeart Podcasts and Scratch Track Productions. The show's executive producer is James Morrison. Our executive producers from iHeart are Jordan Runtaw and Jason English. Original music composed by me, Bob Crawford. Please keep in touch. Our email is americanhistoryhotline@gmail.com. If you like the show, please tell your friends and leave us a review in Apple Podcasts. I'm your host, Bob Crawford. Feel free to hit me up on social media to ask a history question or to let me know what you think of the show. You can find me at Bob Crawford Base. Thanks so much for listening. See you next week.
What's up, up, fam? It's sports journalist Ari Chambers.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your girl, Sam J.
And we're the hosts of Everyone Watches Women's Sports, a new podcast from Together.
We're breaking down the biggest headlines, the viral moments, and the stories everyone's talking about across women's sports.
From game-changing performances to culture-shifting conversations, we'll give you our takes, our debates, and a few laughs along the way.
Because everyone watches women's sports. Listen to Everyone Watches Women's Sports
on the iHeartRadio app,
Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Joy is essential and it's also elusive. But now there's a new and exciting way to start your journey toward a more joyful existence. Joy 101. It's a new podcast hosted by me, Hoda Kotb. If you're craving inspiration to maximize your joy, tune into these candid, uplifting, and moving on-air chats. Open your free iHeartRadio app, search Joy 101, and listen now. Joy 101 with Hoda Kotb is presented by CVS.
Hey everyone, it's the Jonas Brothers. This week on the podcast, Hey Jonas, we're hanging out with Michael Bublé. After Kevin's recent interesting confession about Michael, we figured there's only one thing to do. We must invite Michael Bublé on the podcast, and we want to know what's on his Sexy Time playlist.
You know, I did an interview, and they're like, have you heard about this Jonas Brothers thing? And they're like, what did you think of it? And I was like, well, I mean, it's reciprocal.
We talk about Kevin's confession, Michael's reaction, and a whole lot more. Our conversation with Michael Bublé is out now. Listen to Hey Jonas on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
30 years ago, an island off Manhattan almost brought down New York City.
Who will you trust? Your friends and neighbors? Or will you trust the people 5 miles overseas?
This is a story about neighbors turning on each other and what happens when a forgotten place decides it's had enough.
But we're not stopping, are we?
Listen to Revisionist History, The Staten Island Problem on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
150 years ago, they were hunting us down to kill us, and now they're hunting down immigrants to deport them.
This is First America, the true story of how the United States came to be and how we got to this present moment. Listen to First America on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.